Imagine a reel of celluloid so strange, so daring, that governments ordered it locked away. Across Europe, science fiction wasn't just entertainment, it was a political weapon, a mirror that frightened those in power. Some of these films were censored, others outright banned, and many nearly vanished. But their shadows still linger. Which stories were too dangerous to be told? Let's dive into the forgotten vault. Number 12. The Silent Star, 1960. At first glance, this East German-Polish co-production was hailed as a triumph. Marketed as a dazzling vision of interplanetary travel, The Silent Star was based loosely on a Stanisław Lem novel. Its premise: astronauts discover a recording left by Venusians, revealing a plan for Earth's destruction, an eerie allegory for nuclear war. In Eastern Europe, it was promoted as proof that socialism could conquer the stars. But here's the twist. Western distributors recoiled. American and British authorities branded it dangerous propaganda, its message seen as too aligned with communist ideology. Some whispered it was less a film and more a recruitment tool, planting suspicion about NATO's nuclear arsenal. Entire scenes were slashed, and in certain countries, screenings were delayed for years. Behind the scenes, even Lem himself was furious. He disavowed the movie, claiming it distorted his work with crude ideology. Critics in West Germany mocked it as heavy-handed, while in the East it was celebrated, then quietly withdrawn once the political winds shifted. The legacy? For decades, The Silent Star existed in censored fragments, only resurfacing in full much later on home video. Today it's studied not just as science fiction, but as a relic of Cold War cinema, an artifact where rocket ships carried both astronauts and propaganda. Its silence was less about Venus and more about the secrets Earth feared to face. Number 11. Alita, Queen of Mars, 1924. Though born in the Soviet Union decades before the atomic age, Alita was one of the first European films ever to be banned for its futuristic vision. At release, it stunned audiences with its avant-garde sets and bold costumes, depicting a love triangle between an engineer, his wife, and the alien Queen of Mars. To Soviet officials, the film's real danger wasn't Martians, it was metaphor. Imagine this. In a society building strict communist order, here was a film about rebellion on another planet. Martian slaves rise against their rulers, echoing class struggle, but the film also suggested personal passions could disrupt duty. That whisper of individual desire clashed with state messaging. At first, Alita was screened widely, even acclaimed as a visual masterpiece. Then, in a sudden turn, it was condemned as formalist nonsense and banned from further circulation. Behind the scenes, director Yakov Protazanov faced scrutiny. State critics accused him of corrupting cinema with Western-style melodrama. Some even speculated that the film's imagery, a queen in exotic headdresses, lavish palaces, was decadent, distracting from socialist realism. By the late 1920s, Alita was virtually buried, surviving only in scattered archives. Yet its legacy proved impossible to erase. European sci-fi designers decades later, from Fritz Lang's Metropolis to countless Cold War visions, borrowed from its striking imagery. When rediscovered in the West, critics saw it less as propaganda, more as a dreamlike artifact of early modernism. Today, Alita stands as both a warning and a wonder, a film punished not for its rockets, but for daring to imagine freedom, on Mars and on Earth. Number 10. Ikaria XB1, 1963. When Ikaria XB1 first premiered in Czechoslovakia, it was hailed as the Eastern Bloc's answer to Hollywood's space race. Sleek, mysterious, and daringly philosophical, it told the story of a starship's voyage into deep space, where the crew encounters strange derelicts, existential dread, and finally a glimpse of alien life. Some called it the European Star Trek before Star Trek. But here's the twist. It was quickly branded dangerous. Why? Because its themes mirrored anxieties about authoritarian control. The crew's clashes with bureaucratic orders echoed real frustrations behind the Iron Curtain. Western censors, too, didn't know what to do with it. When the film was imported to America, it was chopped to pieces, renamed Voyage to the End of the Universe, and stripped of its political bite. Entire scenes hinting at moral corruption and Cold War paranoia were deleted. Behind the curtain, production itself wasn't smooth. Designers fought to balance futuristic visuals with tight budgets. The film's unsettling discovery of a derelict ship filled with corpses of decadent humans, a clear allegory for capitalist decay, infuriated Western distributors. Some whispered that the scene was deliberately toned down for certain screenings to avoid outright bans. Its legacy? Nearly lost, then resurrected decades later on restored prints. Today, cinephiles celebrate Ikaria XB1 as a visionary masterpiece that predated 2001, a space odyssey in both mood and imagery. For years, it was hidden, distorted, and silenced, but in the end, the ship found its audience. Its warning about isolation, ideology, and humanity's fragile spirit remains chillingly timely. Number 9, Alphaville, 1965. Jean-Luc Godard's Alphaville arrived like a grenade in French cinema. Critics called it daring, baffling, even insane. Filmed in stark black and white, it portrayed a future city ruled by a totalitarian computer named Alpha 60, where logic crushed love and citizens lived like ghosts. With its mix of noir, sci-fi, and avant-garde chaos, it was unlike anything audiences had ever seen. But the reaction wasn't all applause. In several European countries, Alphaville was quietly suppressed. The reason? Its attack on dehumanizing technology and authoritarian systems struck too close to home during a time when governments tightened surveillance. Officials feared the film's cryptic imagery might inspire unrest, while others dismissed it as incomprehensible and therefore dangerous. Some screenings were outright canceled, and rumors swirled that state broadcasters refused to air it for fear of corrupting youth. Behind the scenes, Godard was unapologetic. He filmed without elaborate sets, using real Paris streets and neon-lit buildings, making the future feel terrifyingly present. Some crew members clashed with his chaotic methods. Others whispered that the director's disdain for traditional storytelling alienated distributors. Audiences walked out in confusion, while critics split between declaring it genius or gibberish. The aftermath is poetic. Once banned and ridiculed, Alphaville became a cornerstone of European cinema. Its influence can be traced through dystopian films and cyberpunk literature alike. Today it's studied as prophecy, warning that even without spaceships or aliens, tyranny could thrive in cold, mechanical cities. Its haunting message lingers: love or logic? Which survives? Number 8. The Andromeda Nebula, 1967. In the Soviet Union, the Andromeda Nebula promised grandeur. Adapted from Ivan Yefimov's celebrated novel, it depicted humanity's utopian march into space. Critics at first called it visionary, even majestic. Audiences were dazzled by cosmic sets, shimmering starships, and its bold promise that communism had secured mankind's future among the stars. But here's where it turned dark. After a short release, the film was abruptly pulled. Why? Some whispered the reasons were technical: unfinished visual effects, missing reels. Others claimed something more sinister. The authorities feared its portrayal of individual doubt and inner conflict clashed with the state's narrative of perfect socialist harmony. Dissent, even framed as science fiction, was unacceptable. Behind the camera, chaos brewed. Production delays drained resources, and Soviet officials pressured the crew to deliver a perfect ideological product. Instead, they received a film filled with philosophical monologues and unsettling ambiguity. For years it vanished, spoken of only in rumors. Critics who praised it risked accusations of cosmopolitanism, a veiled charge of disloyalty. Its aftermath was haunting. For decades, the Andromeda Nebula was nearly impossible to find, existing only in whispered memories and battered prints. When it resurfaced, scholars hailed it as a lost treasure of Soviet sci-fi. But its banning told a deeper story, that even in dreams of utopia, authorities feared questions about the cracks beneath the facade. The stars, after all, could reveal truths Earth longed to suppress. Number 7. Fantastic Planet, 1973. When René Lelou's Fantastic Planet premiered in France, it was hailed as both visionary and disturbing. An animated tale unlike any other, it depicted a distant world where giant blue aliens, the Drogs, treated humans, called Alms, as little more than pets or pests. The surreal imagery, eerie score, and allegorical depth turned it into a cult masterpiece almost instantly. But here's the twist. Not every country welcomed it. In Eastern Europe, censors banned the film, claiming its imagery of humans rebelling against their alien overlords was too easily read as a metaphor for suppressed nations fighting authoritarian rule. In the West, some distributors shied away, unsettled by its grotesque and dreamlike style. In certain regions, church leaders even condemned it as corrupting, fearing its surrealism carried hidden, subversive messages. Behind the scenes, the production was a battle itself. Lalu struggled with budget shortages, and animators used cutout techniques that gave the film its unique, uncanny feel. Rumors spread that French authorities debated restricting it, worried that its political allegory could be seen as anti-establishment. Critics, however, were divided. Some hailed it as brilliant, others dismissed it as incomprehensible. Its aftermath is legendary. Once banned, censored, or quietly buried, Fantastic Planet resurfaced decades later as a cult triumph, embraced by counterculture and studied in universities as a surrealist milestone. Today, it's remembered as one of the boldest European sci-fi films ever made, a psychedelic warning that freedom is fragile, and imagination can terrify those who fear rebellion. Number 6. THX, 1138, European release, 1971. Though directed by an American, George Lucas's debut, THX 1138 faced some of its harshest battles not in Hollywood, but across Europe. The story of a sterile dystopian future where humans were stripped of individuality by drugs and surveillance resonated strongly with audiences. Critics in France and Italy praised its bleak vision, calling it daring and philosophical. Yet European authorities bristled. In countries still scarred by student revolts and political unrest, the film's imagery of controlled masses and rebellion rang like an alarm bell. Several governments restricted screenings, with whispers that it could incite unrest. Censors targeted its portrayal of humans breaking free from conformity, branding it too dangerous for young audiences already questioning authority. Behind the curtain, distributors clashed over edits. In Britain, the film was trimmed for television broadcasts, softening its most unsettling sequences. Rumors spread that Lucas himself was furious at how European censors had mutilated his debut. Audiences in some countries only saw heavily cut versions, drained of their political sting. And yet, its legacy survived. Years later, THX 1138 found a second life through re-releases, influencing countless European filmmakers exploring themes of surveillance, alienation, and control. What was once banned or silenced became a reference point for the very fears governments tried to bury. The film's whisper remains clear. Conformity may be enforced, but rebellion always finds a way. Number 5. In the Dust of the Stars, 1976. East German cinema rarely ventured into cosmic allegory, but In the Dust of the Stars dared to. Released by DIFA Studios, it presented a glittering, psychedelic tale of astronauts discovering a planet where a ruling elite deceived its workers into slavery. Critics noted the irony: a socialist studio producing a story about oppressed laborers trapped under false promises. The response? Swift censorship. Authorities in East Germany grew alarmed at its message. Though cloaked in science fiction, the film's allegory of manipulation and control cut too close to criticisms of their own system. Some screenings were canceled outright, others restricted only to safe audiences. In the West, distributors dismissed it as propaganda, ironically ensuring the film remained doubly silenced. Behind the scenes, chaos brewed. Directors and designers pushed for bold colors and surreal set designs, creating a dazzling, otherworldly spectacle. But their ambition clashed with officials demanding ideological purity. Actors later admitted they suspected the story was edited under pressure, its critique dulled to avoid complete banning. Its legacy is bittersweet. For decades, In the Dust of the Stars remained forgotten, nearly erased from cultural memory. Then, in the late 20th century, it was rediscovered, earning cult admiration for its strange visuals and haunting allegory. Today, it stands as proof that even under censorship, filmmakers found ways to whisper truths. Beneath the glittering stars, rebellion still flickered. Number 4. The Man Who Fell to Earth, European cut, 1976. When Nicholas Roeg's The Man Who Fell to Earth hit cinemas, it was both mesmerizing and terrifying. With David Bowie as the alien Thomas Jerome Newton, stranded on Earth while seeking water for his dying planet, the film blended sci-fi with surreal nightmare. Audiences were dazzled by its strangeness, but censors in Europe saw danger in its imagery. Imagine this, a film about an outsider destroyed by human greed and corruption, arriving just as Europe wrestled with political instability, energy crises, and cultural upheaval. Some governments feared its allegory of a fragile being, consumed by power and excess, might spark unrest. The UK censored scenes for television broadcasts, while countries like Spain, still shaking off dictatorship, delayed screenings for years. Others outright banned the film for its disturbing tone and what officials called subversive undercurrents. Behind the scenes, the chaos was no less intense. Rogue clashed with distributors, who demanded cuts to make the story more commercial. Bowie, meanwhile, reportedly lived, the role blurring the line between character and personal struggle. Critics in France and Germany praised the film's artistry, while others dismissed it as incoherent. Rumors swirled that censorship boards were less concerned with content and more with Bowie's otherworldly presence, fearing it represented a new counterculture that governments couldn't control. Its legacy is undeniable. Once banned or trimmed, the film later resurfaced in restored editions, hailed as a cult masterpiece and studied for its haunting imagery of alienation. Today, it's remembered as a film ahead of its time, punished not for rockets or planets, but for exposing the greed and emptiness that Earth itself tried to hide. Number 3. Solaris, 1972. Andrei Tarkovsky's Solaris was intended as the Soviet Union's answer to Stanley Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey. But what emerged was more than spectacle. It was a slow, dreamlike meditation on memory, grief, and the impossibility of human connection. The story of a psychologist sent to a space station orbiting a mysterious planet, only to encounter ghostly apparitions of his dead wife, unsettled audiences worldwide. Here's the twist. Though acclaimed, the film faced suppression in parts of Eastern Europe. Authorities whispered it was too personal, too focused on inner doubt and emotional turmoil rather than collective triumph. In countries where cinema was expected to glorify ideology, Tarkovsky's melancholic vision was branded suspicious. Some screenings were restricted, while certain Western distributors shortened it, fearing its philosophical pace would alienate audiences. Behind the camera, Tarkovsky's perfectionism clashed with Soviet officials. He resisted pressure to make the film more overtly ideological, instead crafting long, hypnotic sequences that critics described as poetic and unsettling. Some crew members confessed later that state authorities pressured them to tone down the film's themes of grief, worried that it undermined Soviet ideals of strength and unity. The aftermath is legendary. Though once censored or mutilated, Solaris eventually gained recognition as one of the greatest works of world cinema. Its influence reached far beyond Europe, inspiring generations of filmmakers. Today, it stands as proof that the most dangerous sci-fi is not about aliens or invasions, but about what happens when we confront the ghosts of our own minds. For Tarkovsky, that was precisely why it frightened the authorities. Number 2. Metropolis, 1927. Fritz Lang's Metropolis was a revelation when it premiered in Weimar, Germany. Towering skyscrapers, vast machines, and a city divided between wealthy elites and oppressed workers created an unforgettable vision of the future. Critics called it revolutionary, terrifying, and unforgettable. Audiences were stunned by its imagery of rebellion, love, and a mechanical false Maria who led workers to revolt. But immediately the backlash began. Authorities feared it glorified class struggle, with its imagery of oppressed laborers rising against cruel masters. Bans swept across several European nations. In Germany itself, the film was cut to pieces, removing key scenes of rebellion and political allegory. Religious groups in Europe branded it immoral, calling its robotic temptress a symbol of corruption. In Britain and France, censors demanded edits, fearing it would inspire unrest. Behind the scenes, chaos reigned. Lang clashed with producers over its extravagant cost, which nearly bankrupted UFA studios. Some whispered that the government leaned on distributors to silence its more radical message. The version most audiences saw was mangled, fragmented, drained of its original political power. For decades, large parts of the film were thought lost, buried by censorship and decay. And yet, Metropolis refused to die. Rediscovered fragments in Argentina and elsewhere allowed near-complete restorations decades later. Now hailed as one of the greatest films in history, its once-banned vision resonates stronger than ever. What governments feared, that cinema could spark rebellion, became its ultimate triumph. Metropolis endures as a reminder. Even in silence, truth survives. Number 1, Stalker, 1979. Andrei Tarkovsky's Stalker is often hailed as one of the greatest films ever made, but its journey was plagued with censorship, suspicion, and near erasure. On its surface, the story seemed simple. 3 men, a writer, a scientist, and a guide, venture into the Zone, a mysterious forbidden landscape where a hidden room supposedly grants deepest desires. But beneath that surface was a dangerous allegory. Here's the kicker. The Zone looks suspiciously like the forbidden spaces of the Soviet Union itself. Closed-off cities, restricted military zones, and places where truth was hidden. Authorities quickly realized that Tarkovsky wasn't just making a sci-fi fable. He was challenging the system's control over hope, despair, and human longing. While the film was allowed limited release, it was quietly suppressed in several Eastern Bloc countries. Whispers spread that certain governments feared its ambiguity would inspire rebellion. Behind the scenes, Stalker was cursed. Toxic filming locations made cast and crew ill. Some later speculated this exposure contributed to Tarkovsky's own death. The first cut of the film was destroyed due to botched film stock, forcing Tarkovsky to reshoot almost everything from scratch. State officials grew increasingly impatient with the budget overruns, questioning whether the film was even politically safe. Critics within the Soviet Union were divided. Some hailed it as profound, others dismissed it as anti-Soviet mysticism, the legacy immense. Though once suppressed, Stalker has since become a towering masterpiece of European cinema. Its imagery of endless ruins, its haunting silences, and its meditation on faith and despair echo through generations of filmmakers and writers. What the authorities feared was true. Stalker was never just about science fiction. It was about forbidden hope, a journey into the spaces we're told not to enter. And in that silence, it dared to whisper the most dangerous truth. That desire itself can be rebellion. From The Silent Star to Stalker, these films remind us that science fiction was never just fantasy. It was prophecy, rebellion, and resistance. Censors tried to silence them, but their warnings still shine today. Which of these lost visions shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more hidden cinema.